Good morning, class. Happy Thursday, May 7th. Today's learning target is to talk about the legislative branch of government. We have three branches of government. We will go through the legislative branch first. So we're going to talk about the purpose of that branch, the basic structure for how it's set up, and then the main powers that it has for our national government. Our agenda for today is first we're going to be taking some notes on the legislative branch, and we'll go through the basics of the purpose, structure, and main powers that it has. We will then have a worksheet for you to do based on those notes, based on a reading, as well as a video that I'll post for you to watch as well. At the end of this video, I'll explain what you should be expected to do on Friday. That Congress in a Flash worksheet is due 3 p.m. today. That will be a homework grade for you. So we're going to hop right into the notes here in a second. But first, I asked you yesterday to describe your feelings and attitudes, etc., towards government using one or two words. Some people use words like important and powerful and strong, and some people use other words too. Most people, the older you get at least, this is what I've noticed from teaching this class, the older you are, the more negative and cynical you become towards government. Probably because you experience some of the frustrating parts of government, whether that's paying taxes or going through things like Secretary of State office or the DMV or something like that. And you just view government as ineffective and slow and frustrating. I think if any of you are Parks and Rec fans, this scene from Parks and Rec where Ron Swanson, this guy right here, is explaining how government works to this little girl for her school project, and the girl, after talking with Ron Swanson, writes in her report, when she's answering the question, why does government matter? Her report simply says, it doesn't. And that seems to be a lot of the public perception towards government, even still today, that we have. And I think that's something that isn't just a political party thing. That's something that a lot of Republicans and Democrats think about government, is that it's frustrating and ineffective. I am hoping that you'll find the value of government from this class, even if it can be frustrating in real life. So we're talking about the legislative branch. The primary purpose of the legislative branch is to make laws. That is its job. We talk about separation of powers. This is the power that it has and that nobody else, other branches of government, has. And according to the Constitution, this branch of government is also the most important, which I would agree with because I personally think it's the most powerful, even though technically separation of powers, checks and balances, is supposed to make each branch's power equal. For the most part, that's true, but I think the legislative branch has just a nose ahead of the other branches in terms of power. Legislative branch is bicameral. That means it has two houses. We have the Senate and we have the House of Representatives. We're going to start with the House of Representatives. It is known as the lower house. It is known as the lower house because it's viewed as slightly less prestigious. Part of the reason why is because, one, you represent fewer people if you are in the House of Representatives, and two, there are more people in the House of Representatives, which means there are more of you, and you're less rare, and therefore less prestigious, the lower house. It is a local representation. Based on population, it's proportional. That means that larger states have more representatives in the House than smaller ones do. So a place like Wyoming, which has a small population, will have fewer representatives in the House than a state like California or Texas, which has way more people. What they do is they split up states based on population into districts, and each member in the House for that state represents a specific district. District represents about 700,000 people. So the more people you have, the more districts you have, the more members in the House that you have. There are 435 total members between the 50 states in the House of Representatives. Each one will serve only a 2-year term. That is shorter than senators or the president or Supreme Court justices will serve. The reason why it's only 2 years is because they want it to be flexible. Since they represent a smaller region in the United States, the smaller the region, the more that interests will change. The interests of WMC will change more quickly than the interests of Michigan as a whole. So by keeping terms shorter, you can then vote in new people or just have your representation reflect more flexibility. In order to become a member of the House of Representatives, which I know is all of your goals in life, you need to be at least 25 years old, have 7 years of citizenship in the United States, and you must be a resident of the state that you are choosing and running for election in. For the setup of the House, the Speaker of the House is the person who presides. That means they are in charge. Currently, that person's name is Nancy Pelosi. She will always, or he will always represent the majority party. Currently in the House, the Democrats have more members than the Republicans do. If that switches after the next election, then the Speaker of the House will change to become someone who is then a Republican instead of a Democrat. Each party has a majority and minority floor leader, and those people have whips, which are assistant floor leaders. The job of floor leaders is simply to gather support to vote for bills. So if you're a Republican majority leader, your job is to get support from other Republicans to make sure that those people will vote in a certain way for a certain bill. That's their job. That's kind of the basic setup for the House. For the Senate, it is known as the upper house because there are fewer people and they represent the entire state, not just a district of the state. And each state gets 2 members in the Senate. It is equal representation. So we have 50 states, 2 per state. That means 100 total people in the Senate. 100 is fewer than 435. That's why it's the upper, not lower house. Also, they serve for longer terms. You serve for 6 years. That's longer than even our president would serve. But they don't do all 100 members being reelected at the same time. What they do is they stagger it every 2 years. So 1/3 of the 100 people will be up for reelection this year, and then a different third of the people in the House will be up for reelection in 2 years, 2022, and the last third will be up in 2024. And the reason why they do that is just to keep some stability. Right? In the House, we want flexibility. Since you're representing a larger area of land, the entire state, you want more stability. If you have them all up for re-election the same year, and many of them get replaced by somebody else, it's hard to get things done with that much turnover. A little bit stricter requirements. Instead of 25 years old, you have to be 30. Instead of 7 years, it's 9. And just like in the House, you have to be a resident of your state. The person who presides in the Senate is the Vice President. Currently, that person is Mike Pence. Otherwise, the President pro temp will be the person who presides. Vice President rarely is at the Senate. He or she has other responsibilities to take care of. So usually it's the President pro temp who is in charge of the Senate. And that person, just like in the House, will represent the majority party. And in the Senate, currently the Republicans are in control of the Senate. You will also have majority and minority floor leaders, and you will have whips. Those leaders and whips do the same exact thing that they do in the House. The only difference is you're in a different chamber of Congress. Currently, the President pro temp, who is usually the person presiding, is Chuck Grassley. So the House and Senate have some powers that they share and some that are separate. In the House, specifically only for them, they are in charge of revenue laws, laws that make the country money. To put it in simpler terms, they're called money bills, but in a lot of ways that means tax bills. They also are in charge of impeaching a government official, and they will elect the president if there is no electoral majority. And we'll talk more about the electoral voting process later on, hopefully. Both the House and the Senate are responsible to pass legislation, which is a simple way of saying make laws. They can override a veto from the president. It's one of their checks and balances that they hold. They will initiate amendments, which means you start amendments, and they declare war. So these are all 4 things or things they do together, not just one or the other. And for just the Senate, they confirm appointments from the president, like a Supreme Court justice. If somebody gets impeached, the trial for that impeachment will be in the Senate. Realize to be impeached does not mean you get removed from office. It just means you are formally accused and you are going to trial. Then you have the trial, and if you're guilty in the trial, you become impeached as a result of that. This happened with President Trump. He was not found guilty. That's why he's still a president. Ratifying treaties is another thing that the Senate does, and the vice president will be elected by the Senate if there's no electoral majority there. Just so you know, for impeachment trials in the Senate, Even though the Vice President and President Pro Temp preside, it would be the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts who would be presiding over that, not a member of the executive or legislative branch. So that's the basic setup for how the legislative branch works, how it's organized, the powers that it has. What I need you to do is complete the Congress in a Flash worksheet. Once again, that's a homework grade due at 3 p.m. today. You've got these notes to use. There's a reading attached with that assignment you can use. I've also posted a video and the same assignment as well that you can watch, all to help you answer those questions. For Friday, what you should be focused on is making sure you're caught up with any missing or late work. Remember our policy change for that. I posted that on Google Classroom Monday morning. Also, don't forget that your retakes for your test, if you choose to do a retake, are due 3 p.m. today as well. If you don't have it done by 3 p.m. today, then the retake opportunity will no longer be available for you after that. Otherwise, if you have questions about the work or about the notes, please let me know. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you more next week.